One of the reasons I fell in love with Jen as deeply as I did is because of how spontaneous of a person she was. No matter what we were doing, how boring it was, we would always find a way to have a good time. We would be laughing about the stupidest things together. And I knew this about her from the moment we met. She's from Santa Barbara. I was living in San Diego, and she was visiting. She was with her friends, and they ran into me and asked if I wanted to come to the beach with them. And that's what I did. I can't even describe it, but talking to her and being with her, even though we had just met, I got this feeling. I just knew she was the one. I knew that someday I would fall in love with her, and someday we would get married and have kids. I just got this feeling. So after our time together on the beach, they all went back to Santa Barbara, and I was in San Diego. Jen and I kept texting and talking, and I had this trip coming up to Germany. It was my grandma's 85th birthday, and my whole family and I were going to go out there to celebrate. And even though I didn't know Jen, she didn't know me, I thought it would be cool to invite her on the trip, because if it worked out, I thought it would be the coolest memory and story. So that's what I did. I invited her on this trip, and she, being the spontaneous person that she is, agreed to come along. And that's exactly what happened. The trip turned out beautifully. It was an amazing time. We traveled Europe together. We rented a motorcycle in Monaco. We hiked the Italian Alps. And I remember there was this moment when we were in Italy at a gas station, and they had this goofy watch display. It was these $10 rubber watches, and we thought it would be funny if we both got them as a souvenir. And we did. And that's this watch right here. And even though Jen and I aren't together anymore, it's the only watch I have. And lately I've been jumping in the ocean every morning to do a cold plunge. So I use the watch to time myself and see how much longer I have to suffer in the cold. And that's what I was doing this morning. So I'm in the ocean, and I go to look at this watch, and I see that the second hand had stopped ticking. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It felt like a metaphor. Because just like this watch, the time that we shared together had also come to an end. And if it wasn't for how cold that water was, I probably would have started crying right then and there. But now as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about it, and I'm realizing that there's many moments in life that you don't realize how important they will be someday in the future. You don't realize you're making a memory until it is a memory. And that's what this watch represents for me. It represents my time with someone that I loved and still do love. And even though it's really hard thinking about that right now, I never want to lose that. I always want to remember the time that I shared with Jen and the person that she was and how good she made me feel. So even though this watch is broken, and even though our relationship is broken, I might never hear from her again. And looking back on it, those times in Europe that we spent together, that might have been the highlight of our relationship. And for that reason, I'm never going to get rid of this watch. I'm never going to throw this thing out, even though it's broken, because it reminds me of her, and it reminds me of the person that I fell in love with. That's what I wanted to talk about today.